and welcome to take 2 of Kate's literary house party. We have now got the tech running, which is fantastic news, and it means that we are going to be able to bring in the fantastic Elly Griffiths to join my literary house share. We're going to hear about how she uses settings in her books and maybe a little bit about what she's like to live with. And this is assuming I can get it to work now, fingers crossed. Now we will get a little countdown and then hopefully any second now. And there she is. Hello.
Hi.
Brilliant. It's worked. So far it's been one of those things with the whole kind of going live on Facebook, where it's gone pretty well, apart from where I have like trigger trouble with the graphics and things. But it's just a real pleasure to be able to be here on a Sunday with such a brilliant guest. So Elly probably needs no introduction for most of you, but she is the writer of currently the 12th Dr. Ruth Galloway mystery, which is The Lantern Men, which I'm going to see if I can find up in a really fancy way. There we go. As well as my favourites, which are actually the Brighton mysteries, because I'm an adopted Brighton girl. You've pretty much lived near and in Brighton all your life, haven't you now, Elly?
Well, I have. Yeah, we moved to Brighton when I was 5. So I kind of count myself as a Brightonian. Went to school in Brighton, went to a big comprehensive school in Hove, actually, as we say in Brighton. But I went away to university, and and then I lived in London for 10 years, and then I came back, and it was one of those things, where you're thinking of somewhere to live, and my husband and I quite liked, we love Brighton, and I said, I'd love to go back to Brighton, but I just don't want to end up in Saltdean, which is where I grew up, which is a very little village just outside Brighton. And what can I see out of my window now? It is Saltdean, which is very lovely, and it's got beautiful sea views and everything, but it's exactly where I grew up. So it's something a bit weird about being exactly where you grew up, but hey, as you and I know, Brighton is a wonderful place to live, so I'm really not complaining about it.
It's especially a fantastic place during these weird times, isn't it? I've found, being able to go and look at the horizon, even though you're in lockdown, it's a privilege.
It's something about being able to, and I can see the sea from my study here, and it's only sort of about 5 minutes walk to the sea, and something about just looking out, isn't there? Not seeing the horizon, just not seeing anything until the horizon. I think it's very good for you. So yeah, I feel so lucky to be near the sea. It's quite crowded though sometimes. Is it where you are?
It depends. So I'm right in North Lane, so
lovely,
exactly in the middle. And what I'm really missing though at the moment is that one of the things we love about living in this bit is there are always people, but we live on a twitten.
Oh,
so
nice.
So anyone who doesn't live in Brighton or Sussex will maybe not have heard the word twitten, but it basically means a little alleyway. I always think it probably comes from betwixt and between, something like that.
It's a real Sussex word, isn't it? It's a lovely word.
And so that means that we have a little oasis of calm because people don't come down here, but we can step right into North Lane. And normally it's just packed with people loving the shops and the restaurants, all independent in our bit. And at the moment, they're not busy, although we're starting to see little green shoots because you've got shops and pubs that are doing takeaway, which
nice.
Actually really, from having so many choices, just seeing those little shops opening up again, I kind of like it.
When we lived in central Brighton, it was lovely because you don't need to really go out, you just need to look out your window, and there's like an endless sort of theatre of things happening. So I can imagine you would miss that a lot. I mean, it's much quieter in Saltdean, but as I say, it is a lovely place to be. We've got a nice garden and we can see the sea. So I'm really, really not complaining.
So we are talking in these house party shows about the idea of a house party, something obviously we're not allowed to have at the moment, and especially about kind of maybe thinking about the people that we might live with instead of the ones that we are locked in with at the moment. So as part of that, we've got this thing called the Cellar Game, and I have asked you to pick 3 fantasy or nightmare house guests. So would you like, without telling us who you would choose for which room, would you just like to introduce the people that you've got as part of your Cellar Game housemate choices?
So I think I had a little bit of a brainstorm, Kate, when you asked me, but I'm going with these people. So I've chosen Pope Benedict, Bruce Springsteen, and Sarah Beanie.
Okay, and what we are going to learn a bit later. Oh, there we go. I've gone a bit crazy with the old images, so they're all kind of coming up in a weird way now. I knew it would happen. We have got right. Where am I? I seem to have disappeared completely now.
Where are any of us?
I'm back. Anyway, a bit later on, we're going to discover which of those people you'd like with you in the kitchen, which of those people you'd like with you in the bedroom for any purpose, and which of those you'd like to lock in the cellar. But before we start revealing that, I would like to know what you think you'll like to live with.
Well, I think I'm quite jolly, which is possibly both a good thing and a bad thing. You know, I think I'm quite good at, and I shared a flat. I'm thinking quite a lot about this when I was reading your wonderful book, House Share. And I was thinking about when I was a student, I shared a flat in Peckham with 4 friends, or 5 of us there. It was a really dilapidated flat above a poodle parlour. And now Peckham's really come up in the world, hasn't it? So I had a look on it the other day, and the house is very smart now, but the poodle parlour's still there, which is kind of quite lovely. Maybe there's a royal charter that says there always has to be a poodle parlour there. So we did have amazing fun, the 5 of us in the house, really brilliant fun. But I think my housemates would say, and certainly my housemates now, because I'm locked down with my husband and 2 grown-up children, they would probably say, I think that I was quite cheerful, I'm quite easygoing, I don't mind mess, all those sort of things. But on the bad side, I don't mind mess. I'm quite messy. I hate housework. I'll do anything to get out of doing housework. I like to cook, you know, I don't count that as housework. So I think I'm not the tidiest housemate, and that could get on your nerves. And so could the incessant jolliness get on your nerves after a while.
I don't know. I think a little bit of optimism is a good thing. But yeah, I can see what you mean. So if you're not the tidiest person, apart from cooking, are there any chores that you excel at, especially maybe when there's a book deadline in the offing?
No, you see, the thing is, because I hate housework so much, there's literally nothing in the house that I'm good at. You know, I can't sew, I can't do anything like that either. All I can do is write books. So actually I've got no displacement activities. I never say, oh, I'll iron everything or I'll dust everything. So really that does help, because for me, I don't know if it's true for you as well, but for me, writing's still a bit of a treat. So I do say to myself things like, oh, if you do the ironing, you can get half an hour's writing. I give it to myself as a little bit of a treat. So there's literally nothing that I'm good at in the house. As I say, apart from cooking, I can cook, but really nothing. And quite often if I say, oh, I'll hoover, Andy, I hear Andy doing it again because he's a Virgo. But you know, I just haven't done it right. And who wants to know how to hoover? You know, not me.
It's very true. It does give you the fantastic excuse not to do it.
It is. I mean, and I think feminists always used to say that men did this, and they're clutzing out saying, oh, I can't do it. And I have to say, in our house, it's probably me who does it, you know, and oh, I can't do that. You know, I'm so bad at that. But I am trying a bit harder, because it is a bit annoying in a lockdown having someone who literally can't hoover. So
I don't know. Everyone else has got plenty of time to keep things spick and span.
Indeed. And the thing is, I've got a writing shed in the garden, and it's the nicest thing, because Andy at the beginning of this lockdown said, what a great opportunity, you know, to do a deep clean of the house. And I said, what a great opportunity. Unfortunately, I've got a deadline, so I'm going to be in the garden. So it is quite a good excuse, and you can be somewhere else, which I think is quite useful. Where do you work in your house?
I work in our spare bedroom, which is also the office, which is where we are now.
Oh, very nice.
We tidy up like crazy for these. It's not normally.
I haven't tidied my bookshelves, which is these are literally. I do have books by other people in the house, but these are just the shelves where I keep my books. So
I think that's pretty allowed. So you said that you're quite a cook. Given that, I think it's time to reveal your first housemate. Which of these 3 would you like to join you in the kitchen?
So I have chosen Pope Benedict to join me in the kitchen. Now I've chosen Pope Benedict because obviously our Pope at the moment is Francis, and he's everyone's favourite Pope. And he's my favourite Pope. you know, he just seems lovely. So I feel a bit sorry for poor Benedict, who's obviously still alive, unusually for an ex-pope. So I thought I'd invite him because he'd be very pleased. But I'd also heard that one, he is a really good cook, but two, he plays the piano beautifully. Now, our piano in our house is in the kitchen, and my son plays the piano really, really well. He's studying music. And he quite often plays the piano while I'm cooking and things like that. So I thought I'd like someone to do that. Who better than Pope Benedict? So he could make me some nice food, or he could just be playing some lovely Chopin, Beethoven or something, and we could just chat, and I could probably change his mind completely about contraception and the rest of it. Maybe not. But anyhow, I've chosen Pope Benedict.
I love that reason. I really wasn't expecting it. I loved your choices because I have no idea. With some of the people that I've had on, I've thought, okay, yeah, especially the cellar person is normally really clear.
Yes.
Even without knowing the person. But kind of, I had no idea who that was going to be. So that's a really cool thing.
Oh, so, good.
Let's talk a bit then about the place of home in your books and how you conceive of that, really. I mean, first of all, with Ruth, did you always know that you would want to kind of round the character out with not just her work environment, but her domestic sphere as well?
Yes, I think so. I mean, for Ruth, really, and for those books, the place did come first. And I've told this story loads, but it sort of happened when I was walking across some marshland with Andy, my husband, who's an archaeologist when he's not deep cleaning. He mentioned that sort of prehistoric people thought that marshland was sacred because it's neither land nor sea, but something in between. They think of it as prehistoric people thought of it as a bridge to the afterlife, neither land nor sea, neither life nor death, like a liminal zone. And that immediately, the idea for the Ruth books came to me, and I did sort of see Ruth. I've said it before, and I know it sounds very corny, but I did sort of see her then just walking towards me out of the mist. And so I thought, that's Ruth is going to live there. She's going to have a cottage. It's going to be quite isolated, quite beautiful, but a bit bleak on the Norfolk coast there. So really that came first. And I mean, if I were Ruth, you know, as you said earlier on, I'm on book 12 came out in February, The Lantern Men. So I've done 12 books about her. You know, if I were her, I would have moved the first time anything spooky started happening in that house on the edge of the marshes. But there she still is. Oh, is she? Book 12, she does start living somewhere else. So it's quite an interesting book in terms of home, because when this book starts, she's moved and she lives in Cambridge, and she's got a new job and a new house and a new partner. So it's this book is a lot about home. And the idea of the Lantern Men, which is a Norfolk and Cambridgeshire legend, is of these lights, mysterious lights that you see on the marshland, and you mustn't follow them because they would just lead you to your death. And they sort of dark figures called the Lantern Men, who are carrying these sort of shaky handheld lanterns. So the book is a bit about the idea of home and whether Ruth should follow those lights that seem to be leading her home.
I love that idea. They're quite common, aren't they? Those sort of myths of people being brought, you know, Will-o'-the-Wisp, isn't that another one? Which is a strange light.
And there's some good Will-o'-the-Wisp legends. I think one of them is that it was a blacksmith, an evil blacksmith called Jack, who, there's so many stories, but he stole a bit of coal from hell, which he keeps in a pumpkin, hence those jack-o'-lantern pumpkins that you have in Halloween. So there are lots of really good stories about the Will-o'-the-Wisps and those sort of strange little bobbing lights that and of course there are some very boring scientific explanations, like it's phosphorescence, and which is probably the real reason, marsh gas. But I did a lovely event last year at Clay Marshes Nature Reserve, and one of the ornithologists there was saying that they have glowing owls in Norfolk because they eat food that is phosphorescent. And then imagine if you saw an owl coming towards you glowing with this strange light. I had to put a glowing owl in the book, but isn't that weird?
That is so freaky. That would be an amazing thing to see, actually. But yes, once you knew that was the reason.
Yes, it would be an amazing thing to see. And I think, like all of us, I'm now obsessed with birds. I think that's the thing that lockdown's done to us all. I'm always saying, oh, look, there's I don't know, goldfinch, and it turns out not to be. But yes, so a glowing owl would be a lovely thing to see.
And the bird song as well.
We just have seagulls here. I'm very fond of seagulls, but they are sort of bird, aren't they?
They dominate everything, don't they? I always think we have got so many slugs and snails, and apparently it's because the little birds don't eat them because they can't come anywhere nearby. Although we do have a few sparrows in the garden, but that's about as exotic as it gets.
We're trying to tempt birds with a various array of sort of bird tables. And I've also got a cat, though. So he is very interested in the bird table, watches it a lot. That's sweet. He must really like birds.
Oh. I think we'll move on to your second housemate. So we have got our three here again. Who have you chosen to spend time with you in your bedroom?
Well, anyone who knows me will know that the answer is going to be Bruce Springsteen, but I really don't want you to run away with any lewd ideas here, okay? Because Bruce is a happily married man. I'm very happily married. He is lovely, though. But Bruce, one of my favorite Bruce Springsteen songs is Drive All Night. And in that song, he says that he's going to drive all night, rather bizarrely, but let's go with it, to buy somebody some shoes. So I thought it'd be very, very nice to have Bruce, and he would sing to me beautifully, but he might buy me some shoes as well. So I feel that that's a win-win situation, really. I'm a huge Bruce fan, as is Ruth, the character in the Ruth Galloway books.
So that's music that's come up in a couple of those, as well as shoes, obviously. Do you tend to work playing music?
No, I like complete silence when I'm working. I don't never have any music playing, and in fact, and I'm not terribly musical, really. As I say, I've got my children are both musical. My son's studying music. But I've got a very narrow frame of music, really. It's Bruce Springsteen and Italian opera, really. That's basically it. And a bit of sort of classical music. So, yeah, music is important to me, but I couldn't have it when I was working. What about you? Do you have a playlist? Do you listen to music?
I tend to listen to stuff that doesn't distract me. So because it's really familiar to me, I listen to a lot of 80s and 90s indie stuff.
Oh,
that it's just nice, kind of pleasant, especially if I'm editing and it's really hard work, or if I'm doing something kind of quite difficult. Occasionally I do the kind of playing big movie themes. That's what a lot of people have suggested. You know, if you play the sort of epic Game of Thrones soundtrack or those kind of things. So there's no words to distract you, but it kind of maybe kind of puts you in a dramatic frame of mind. I don't know that it's totally the case, I have to say. I've actually got a question here now. We can do this. We can show things. And this is from Russell. How much of your own personality do you put into your characters?
Well, it's a good question, really. And I know there are people do you know that thing where you have a dream and you say to somebody, oh, you want to tell someone your dream, which is very tedious, I know, but there's always somebody who says, oh, everyone in a dream is you. So if you dream about your mum, you're dreaming about the motherly side of you. If you dream about your children, you're dreaming about the childish side of you. But I think in a way it might be true for writers. So maybe everyone is you in a way. Ruth is kind of my best known character, probably, and people often ask if she's me, but in fact she really isn't, I have to say, because Ruth is an archaeologist. I'm not. She's an atheist. I'm not. She is very, very introverted. You know, not she's confident in her work, but she doesn't like socializing. And Kate, you know me, I really like socializing. I really like parties. I'm desperate to have a party. So I don't think there are probably several of my friends, and maybe, you know, little bits of them that have gone into Ruth. But she's not me, I have to say. Maybe Nelson, the detective, is a bit more like me. I've written a children's book, a couple of children's books about a girl called Justice.
Here we go. Look.
God, you're so clever. So yes, a girl called Justice. And she's kind of based on my mum as a schoolgirl. So she's probably one of the only character of mine that really is in my head based on somebody, or on my idea of my mum as a schoolgirl. But funny enough, my mum did write a few short stories when she was a schoolgirl. And interestingly, so my mum was called Sheila Nan Laws, and she wrote short stories about a girl called Nan Laws who solved crimes. And when I first saw this lovely cover, which you've got up on your screen so cleverly, I remember saying to my editor, oh, this is so lovely. Could I write to the artist and thank them? And she said, oh, yes, you please do. She's this really talented American artist. She's called Nan Lawson. It's almost the same name.
That's so spooky.
Isn't it? Yeah, it's lovely.
Lovely as well.
Yeah,
really lovely. Lovely kind of sense of the circle.
Yeah.
So are these set in the past then, as well as being children's books?
Yes, and again, it's one of those things that happens to you as a writer, doesn't it? So I thought randomly, oh, well, I'll start this book in 1936 when Justice is going to school for the first time, age 12. And then I remembered or realized that my mum, who'd been up to that point sort of had not been to school because her dad, she was a single parent family and her dad was an actor and she just traveled around the country with him. She went to school for the first time, age 12 in 1936. So it really is, in a way, her story. Yes, it's set in the 30s. So it's really good fun because in the first book, they can get snowed in. And of course, the phone lines are down and they can't contact anyone. So, and it's also really fun. I've been sort of going around schools a bit talking about these books. It's really fun talking to kids about how different it would have been, no mobile phones, no TV, just one wireless.
Not having mobiles is such a gift for any writer now,
isn't it? It really is. Yes, it really is. But I think you in House Share do the sort of spooky side of social media and people knowing where you are really well. So that is another thing you can do with it, isn't it? Because it is quite scary.
You do need to be thinking about how you can use those, because I think it's a challenge for every genre of writer, whether it's crime or thrillers or whether it's love stories. I mean, so many love stories, and I've written a few of those as well, rely on,
me too.
Yes, of course, under your real name, Domenica de Rosa, which everyone believes is not a real name because it's so gorgeous.
It sounds totally made up. Of course, Domenica means some days. It's the perfect day to talk to me.
So, I mean, those kind of so much of keeping lovers apart relies on miscommunication.
Yes.
And it's such hard work.
It is. It's a bit, but don't you find, because you've written romance and crime as well, I sometimes find it's the same thing, really, isn't it? Because in romance, you misdirect people as to who is Mr. Right or Ms. Right. And in crime, you're just misdirecting as to who is the murderer, really. So I find that you use similar sort of techniques.
I think it's really interesting because sometimes I have ideas. It sounds to me from the diversity of your output that you do too, all the time. And quite often I think I could write the young person's children's version of that idea. And all it takes is a shift in tone then to change it into a children's book versus a crime book versus a romance.
That's so true, actually. And in fact, for me, in a way, in the Justice books, I don't even think the tone is that different. I just made her 12.
You are freezing a bit now. I've no idea whether hopefully you're still there. Yeah.
I'm still here. Here I am. I could see myself freezing.
Oh, you were freezing a little bit more.
Yes.
I wonder if I turn you to. Oh, there you go. Yes, we were talking about that. Carry on. You were talking about...
just saying that just making her 12 sort of made it a children's book, really. But in some ways, I think if you read the Justice books, and I've been reading them aloud, actually, on my Facebook page, which has been super fun. It's been really nice. And in fact, a lot of, quite a lot of people who comment are adults, and they're just... I hope that anyone would enjoy them, really. So it is interesting, isn't it? But if you were to see... Say if you were to see my... If I get one off the shelf, look, here I am. If I get one of my Domenica de Rosa books, I don't know if you can see this.
Yes.
Gorgeous. It looks so different to an Elly Griffiths book, but actually they're not. If you there. Oh dear, I don't suppose there we are.
Yep.
They are so different to look at, but actually I don't think the tone or the style is that much different, but it is interesting. It's an interesting thing, isn't it?
And I think that once you've written a few books, you do have a certain style that's really hard to, you don't really want to get rid of it, but it is something that is set in how you write. But I do think it's just by changing the decisions that people make.
Yes.
I can imagine I could have written The House Share as a romantic story with a completely different setup.
Yeah, yes, you really could have. And in fact, there is a bit of romance in there, if you were to call it romance, and all those things I think work to make it a really deep book. And there's also really love her relationship with her friend in there. I really love that bit of it. It's a great book.
Thank you. Well, you were very kind in giving me a quote as well as coming on today. We're going to go into the kind of darker realm now. Because we do know by a process of elimination, who it is that you have consigned to the cellar in your imaginary house share, Ms. Beanie, but we don't know why. So tell us, why are you putting Sarah Beanie in the cellar?
Well, the thing is that, as I was saying, I'm not very good at housework, and I'm not, I'm not also that good at decorating things, but I love decorating programs. But I do find some of them, and possibly Sarah Beanie's in particular, you know, there's this, whenever I'm doing anything in the house, there's a kind of patronizing voiceover that I hear that is sort of in her voice saying things like, Domenica and Andrew really think that this sofa looks good in this position. What a shame. Oh, Domenica and Andrew are attempting to paint this bookcase. Oh dear. So I have a kind of love-hate relationship with those programs, but I think that by putting Sarah Beanie in the cellar, she'd transform it for me. She'd make it into a beautiful cellar kitchen with maybe a spiral staircase and an Aga. So I'm really being nice, really, putting her in the cellar. Or she would make me a nice gym. I don't know what I'd do with that, but you know, she would make me something in the cellar. So I feel she'd be very happy down there. And then Pope Benedict, Bruce and I could all go down to the cellar and have a little party.
I rather like that idea. Yeah, it's certainly a nicer reality than a lot of people have got in lockdown at the moment, isn't it?
Well, you know, I don't want to be too negative. I'm sure she's a lovely person. It's just those, I mean, I'm fascinated by them, those programs, sort of house, you know, decoration programs, and also those things where people spend a lot of time doing something crafty and it just really looks terrible.
Yes, I must admit I am a bit of a crafter. I have become a bit of a crafter in lockdown, but none of it is necessarily stuff I would want to show.
It's very good. I think it's very good for you to be. And my sister in her house has painted on the walls and it looks amazing because both my sisters are artists. They're really, you know, it looks fantastic. But if I were to suddenly say, oh, I'm going to paint something on my walls, my goodness, it would look bad.
Yeah, although it can be quite therapeutic.
Yes.
And it's funny, it depends how kind of achievement focused you are.
Yeah.
So can you do something that you're not very good at and still enjoy it?
Yes, that's true, actually. And somebody was saying to me, it's actually very good to do things you're not good at for a while. And I've been doing yoga every day with my kids during lockdown, which I'm now a total convert to, but I'm not terribly good at it. But I feel it's quite good for you to do things that you're not good at. There's so many of them for me to choose from. But my kids are quite crafty, actually. My daughter studies science, so she's a scientist, but also she can make amazing things. So, and including masks. So I have been delegating that area to her.
Are you doing yoga with Adrienne?
Yes, I love Adrienne. Adrienne, and her dog Benji.
I don't know how we say it, but we just love her and her dog.
Yeah, Benji, he's so gorgeous. You know, yes. I think she says Adrienne, doesn't she? But I tend to say Adrienne. Yes, I've done the 30 days with her, and I'm doing her May workout for every day in May. So yeah, it's amazing. I think we're all Adrienne, you know, disciples now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are kind of groupies for sure. It's like
she is beautiful to look at, and she sounds lovely. And when she says things like, "Oh, my lovely friends," I think that's me.
I know you feel that. You do the namaste.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the middle of it all. No, I absolutely love it. So, are you writing in lockdown? This is one of my final questions.
Yes, I am. I'm writing Ruth 13. So Ruth 12 was the lantern men we talked about earlier. Ruth 13. So I've got a kind of, I think a lot of writers have got stories like this, but when I planned Ruth 13, it's called The Nighthawk. It was about a deadly virus because based on the fact that archaeologists think that maybe when Beaker people came over from the Middle Europe in the Bronze Age, they arrived and then in only about 300 years, 90% of Neanderthal, Neolithic, 90% of Neolithic DNA disappears. So it just goes. So the indigenous population is wiped out and people think it was from a virus. So this was the basis for my book. But I've really downplayed that now because I just think, you know, I don't want to be writing about it. I don't even want to be reading about it necessarily. So it's still called The Nighthawk and it still has some elements of this prehistoric virus, but it's a different basis in the present day. So it's a kind of creepy story set on a farm. Lots of opportunities for Ruth to dig things up and for her and Nelson to have many misunderstandings. So I'm enjoying it. And I'm also writing the next Justice book. So it's one of the only times I've done that, right? two books at the same time, but it's actually working okay because as I write the Ruth chapter in the morning and Justice in the afternoon.
I was going to say, is it mood related, or are you being very strict? One is morning, one is afternoon.
I'm sort of being strict, and in a way, the Ruth is a tighter deadline, so I want to do that first to make sure I've done it, you know. But it is a little bit mood related. Maybe I feel like a bit of relaxation in the afternoon. I don't know, but yeah.
Oh, well, it's really good stuff. Well, I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thank you.
Anyone who has enjoyed this and heard, you know, some of these stories, just dash straight off. You've got a whole range of brilliant books to choose from that Elly / Dominica has kind of written over the time, but The Lantern Men is up there right now. Obviously, if you're looking for a bit of another escape from lockdown, then you could choose my book, The House Share, which
great.
She's
not saying this, but it's great. I loved it.
Oh.
Also, I love that house, the dye factory. I kind of wanted her to stay there even when awful things were happening, because you describe it so well.
The dye factory, must admit, that was a very fun location to write, because my heroine moves into a crazy warehouse right in the centre of London, Bermondsey, very hipster, very funky.
It's brilliant.
You don't need yoga with Adrian because you've got your own yoga classes on the rooftop.
Yes,
obviously
with a nice fresh juice and lovely. Yeah, I loved it.
It's a creepy, scary thing. So there you go. That's very kind. And just a little moment to plug my guest tomorrow, because this time tomorrow, maybe even slightly earlier, because we might not have the Wi-Fi problems, at 1 o'clock, I am going to have my 6th guest for the house party, which is Paul Burston. I know for a fact he is a fantastic house guest as well. And he too has got some interesting choices for the cellar game. So it's been a pleasure to have my guest today, and come and join us again, same time, same place tomorrow.
Thank you for having me, Kate.
It's been a pleasure.